For the past 2 years, I have adamantly avoided Todd's creations on his creation engine. Not only because of the giant disappointment that Starfield was, which managed to drive me far enough away from the games that I didn't want to touch them again, but I was also practically burned out from Toddy's game formula. Fallout 4 may forever remain my most played game ever, and honestly that's fine by me, because I have so many fond memories of it. However, if we take into consideration that out of my 621 hours played, not including time spent prior on the Xbox app for some godforsaken reason, I have maybe played 10 hours in total without mods. And honestly, that just speaks volumes about the state of these games. But if I were to take away every single mod, one thing that would still remain besides all the NPCs standing on the roof of the houses in Sanctuary, or for some reason the swimming Nick Valentine, one thing that would remain would be the atmosphere. Bethesda somehow always manages to crush the atmosphere in their games. And a big part of that is their soundtrack. So it's really no wonder that when I finally returned to Skyrim, that I was encaptured once more by the brilliance of this soundtrack, which is what this little video will be all about. Because it's not truly Skyrim if our ears are not being blessed by this incredible orchestral undertone. To understand the soundtrack, we need to understand where exactly it came from, and in this case there is one single man who is responsible for the creation of a musical masterpiece. The genius behind this soundtrack is, in similar vein to the Minecraft soundtrack, a pretty unknown and unrecognized soul called Jeremy Soule, who has been pretty much the sole composer for Betty's Elder Scrolls games ever since Morrowind, meaning he also worked on Oblivion and our beloved Skyrim. Some of his other notable work includes the soundtrack for the Guild Wars series, if you're familiar with that, or the Harry Potter games, or even Warhammer. All in all, this man has a pretty stacked resume, and it shows. And probably will not be working on the Elder Scrolls 6, sadly, if they ever even manage to release that game, like ever, due to internal and creative conflicts between him and Bethesda, and also apparently allegations, but they were denied and also never proven, so okay, well, let's shove that aside. I'm not some drama YouTuber about to quote the whole wiki page or some random tweet. We're here to gush about his work. More specifically, his work on Skyrim and its iconic and beloved soundtrack. And I think a big part in that, at least in my way of thinking, and trust me, I know little about this style of music despite deeply appreciating and enjoying it, is how it's able to perfectly blend together and let you feel a perfectly mixed potion of emotions, which are able to shape what this fantasy world is all about. The soundtrack encapsulates an extremely beautiful and somehow transient nature. Coming from this show/manga/anime/Japanese cartoon that is Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which I definitely recommend to anyone. It's absolutely goated, and we just got a second season. I've always been drawn especially to this side of the soundtrack. Oh, also the channel name or my username handle or whatever is actually a reference to that show, which you probably know if you've been paying any attention at all. But the funny lore behind this is actually that I had this name way before I actually knew of its existence, because, you know, being a German, I had to choose a funny, quirky word none of the international people would know for my username after having to move on from the incredibly cringy yet goated gamertag my dad cooked up for me when making my PlayStation Network account way back when, so I just settled for this name. Anyway, let's get back to the soundtrack. There are essentially a few categories we can break the soundtrack into. First is the ambient music that plays whilst exploring the map and interacting with the world, which changes upon where you are. Perhaps you're strolling through one of the city's halls, or getting to the Clouds district, so you'll get a lively undertone. Maybe you're tiptoeing through a dark cave or a dungeon or catacombs, or both, so you'll get a mysterious tone to undermine the dark mystery dungeon cave. Or, and the best tracks are from the following section, you're simply wandering about the world in awe at the landscape as that beautiful soundtrack sets in once more, and you start feeling like you're no longer a corporate slave, but deep inside this fantasy world made up of ones and zeros. But now all these numbers disappear and you feel like you're inside the world, and it has that soft, melancholic and transient nature. Which is something only classical music can accomplish, really. It sure is possible in every style of music and on every instrument, but if you think of some tracks that use, say, an electric guitar, as in, for example, Metallica's One or Pantera's Floods, especially that outro section, to name some from a genre that is pretty much the polar opposite, totally unrelated, it's still possible to achieve this tone, but it's just not as incredibly melancholic and transient as those sweet, sweet violins in the Skyrim soundtrack. Seriously. I have never played or even really seen a violin, but in the more recent years it has become one of my favorite instruments ever. It's so incredibly versatile in its use. No wonder it's been a core instrument in music since forever, basically. Anyway, what the hell are we talking about again? Right, different soundtrack types in this game. This isn't all too special, really. It practically just differentiates from which enemy you're fighting, and you're kind of moving along the scale of, oh, it's just a few war drums for some bandits, to full-on ancient shouting while fighting a dragon. And third is an entirely separate piece we can find in the soundtrack, simply called Skyrim Atmospheres. This is basically a filler track that plays in between these open world songs, but flows over so incredibly smoothly into these main pieces. It serves the point of guaranteeing that the music practically never stops while it's playing and always moves on forth, just like the passage of time. And I think one of the main reasons why it is so easy to get lost in this game for hours upon hours is because of this exact filler. You start living inside the game. The music practically digs its teeth into you and pulls you into the screen. And it makes sure you never even get a small moment where you can think of the real world again. What does nostalgia mean to you exactly? Maybe it's that time in summer where you feel the warmth of the sun on your skin once more and think back to all the football matches you and your friends, which you haven't talked to or seen in years, had back during the high school lunch break. Maybe it's a bite of a sweet apple pie that reminds you of the one your grandma made when you were just a little kid coming over to visit her. And since we're on the food topic already, perhaps it's the awful taste of frozen pizza, which was your go-to food back when you were strapped for cash. These little things can bring back a whole chapter of your life, really, despite only having been small constants at that time. And for some of us, these constants are also video games. I personally am plagued with a terribly good memory, and I can, for some reason, chapter specific periods of my life to the games I played within them. And for games, the things that stick and turn you nostalgic are rarely the taste, except for maybe the Switch game cartridges. More so the stuff that plays all the while in the background whilst you never really pay attention to it, aka the soundtrack. A very simple reason why I feel the soundtrack is able to really make people nostalgic is because it's been so long since you've heard it for the first time. I had a similar moment recently when I was rewatching Star Wars, as in the original 6 movies, not whatever slop Disney has been making ever since taking over. During the iconic scene in the 4th episode of Binary Sunset, I was in tears, because of that damn beautiful music. Now, why is a grown man crying to a fake dual sunset filmed somewhere in Tunisia? Because the last time I heard that music, I was just a little boy. Just a little guy sitting in front of the TV, hoping so damn hard Anakin would return to the light side of the Force. And it's the same thing with Skyrim, considering the game was released like, what, 15 years ago now? I'm on the younger side of players, having played this during my high school time a few years ago, which feels nostalgic to me now, but what about guys who were in their high school years when the game first dropped? They're like, what now, 30 years? Fact is though, the soundtrack is able to make you feel the transient nature of both our own life and the life of the game itself, because the game practically is alive in itself, which is something so little games are able to accomplish, and the soundtrack is just the sweet cherry on top. What do we take from this, besides the obvious fact that the Skyrim OST is still 1.5 decades later incredibly good? Well, maybe it's to appreciate the things we do have while we still have them. Listen, I know just how incredibly cliche that sounds, and you're probably asking yourself, how the fuck did we get here? I clicked on a video about the Skyrim soundtrack. Well, it's an incredibly beautiful feeling to be able to listen to this soundtrack and think back to my old days and think of all the fun times I had. Maybe the lesson here is to love while we still can. Maybe the lesson here is to do the things we want to do while we can still do them. Maybe the lesson here is to just live. I mean, our lives are shorter than we think, and the funny and shitty thing about life is that it's so unpredictable. One day you're sitting there in the middle of the night playing Skyrim whilst on a call with your best buddy, and then suddenly you're sitting there writing a video about that game's soundtrack, no longer in high school, no longer in any contact with that friend from before, and it should really make you think. It's supposed to make you think. Like any great work of art does, it wants you to think.